was alive and well, as he let Woodward know, "If the president had told me at the beginning that it would come out with this strategy and 30,000 troops, I would have taken it in a second." Moreover, General Petraeus said privately he continued to see no end in sight in Afghanistan. He said, quote, "You have to recognize also that I don't think you can win this war. I think you keep on fighting. This is the kind of fight we're in for the rest of our lives and probably our kids' lives," unquote. When Obama replaced McChrystal half a year later by the more subtle, more controlling Petraeus, it was a further submission to the military authorities that the president was elected to command. After JFK was set up by the CIA with the Pentagon support at the Bay of Pigs, also in the missile crisis, when the generals kept sending U.S. Air Force planes into Soviet airspace to provoke an attack from the Soviet Union, because we could then move in with a far more overwhelming strike because we were far superior in nuclear weapons. And when he was being set up, John F. Kennedy bucked his national security state. He fired his main adversary, the head of the Central Intelligence Agency, Allen Dulles, who then re-emerged after his assassination as the most prominent member of the Warren Commission, which should have been called the Dulles Commission. When Obama was set up by General Petraeus, General McChrystal, and their colleagues to escalate the war in Vietnam, our new young president, after, to his credit, months of deliberation, he reluctantly went along. This past August, General Petraeus gave us another warning. He said on Meet the Press a month and a half ago, "If the U.S. loses in Afghanistan, there would likely be a bloody civil war followed by a takeover by extremists." He added, quote, If the U.S. succeeds and Afghanistan stabilizes, that country could become the region's new Silk Road, with the potential to extract trillions of dollars worth of minerals," unquote. If Petraeus fails in his counterinsurgency war to pacify that new road to corporate profits, he can keep on saying that he needed more troops, more time to win there, preparing the political ground for Obama's loss. Petraeus can then return home for a Republican draft to run for president, as many people are urging in that context. Obama, by surrendering to his generals, has been trapped in the same kind of plotting that Kennedy had the insight and the courage to resist. President Barack Obama is, like John Kennedy, a very smart and a sometimes courageous man. Why? Why did he submit to his generals by widening a disastrous war? Did he think he could at least use his waning power to improve the domestic state of the Union, while hoping he could eventually find a way out of our downward spiral of war in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iran? If so, he will finally have to say no, for the sake of us all, to his generals and the powers behind them. They will always want the troops to fight more battles for the rest of our lives, and probably our kids' lives, toward the end of trillions of dollars worth of minerals on a new Silk Road. Can any president of the United States, can any president turn toward peace without being threatened, set up, and if necessary, from the standpoint of his national security state, assassinated? Because of our unwillingness to connect the dots of Dallas with those of Washington, we U.S. citizens have been unable to raise that post-JFK question to consciousness. In the Washington of Barack Obama, where some speak of a president's assassination casually and others deliberately, it is time that we dealt with the question in a serious way. John Kennedy did. From his frequent remarks anticipating his own death, friends said he was obsessed by it. He seems rather to have seen his death in a remarkably detached way in a time of darkness, accepting his own demise, if necessary, from the standpoint of his conscience, as the simple consequence of doing his duty. Once we face the why of Kennedy's assassination, never really mysterious, and now a story documented by the mass of files made public by the Assassination Records Review Board. Hundreds of thousands of such records. They cover an entire building in College Park, Maryland. Now that we have all of these records, they're cited for hundreds of pages in the book. We can deal now with an obvious question that has likely passed through the mind of Barack Obama. This question: can a peacemaking president survive a war-making state? A conscientious president's survival and the carrying out of peace initiatives against the grain of his government and corporate power is entwined with the survival of every human being on earth. The president's vulnerability, while he tries to turn a massive Washington warship toward peace and disarmament, is an unspeakable fact of our politics. But the other side of the unspeakable is ourselves. Our sense of despair when we see a president's reluctance to choose what may kill him raises questions about ourselves. Martin Luther King said in his last testament, a little book published after his death, Trumpet of Conscience, can a nonviolent direct action movement find application on the international level to confront economic and political problems? I believe it can. It is clear to me that the next stage of the movement is to become international. King envisioned an international movement of massive, nonviolent civil disobedience, bringing the business of London, Paris, Washington, and Ottawa to a halt until such centers of autocracy addressed the real questions of democracy. He said we needed to shut down our marketplaces by nonviolent action until business as usual was opened up to the needs of us all, beginning with the poorest, most exploited people on earth. The way our greatest prophet addressed the military-industrial complex was to think and act through it and beyond it. That is why he planned the Poor People's Campaign for Washington. He was initiating it in Memphis in April 1968, supporting the sanitation workers' strike there when he was shot to death. He wanted all those who had nothing to lose to come together in D.C. that spring and summer, however long it would take, to shut down the government by nonviolent resistance until it agreed to shut down poverty and war. Martin Luther King was saying that Washington and Wall Street did not have the final say.